This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Good evening, everyone. We are going to call to order a special meeting this evening of the Easthampton School Committee with the first of our 3 interviews of our superintendent finalist candidates. We're going to begin. I would love a motion to approve these 7 questions that we have shared with candidates for these next 3 interviews.
Motion to approve the 7 questions that we have given to the candidates.
Can I get a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. Just to give you the lay of the land quickly, and then we're going to get to this. We have things pretty carefully timed out this evening. Dr. Kennedy is joining us. We are going to begin with a 5-minute introductory statement from Dr. Kennedy. There will then be a series of 7 large form questions. Each of the questions will be moderated by a different member of the committee. And then at the end of each of those 10 minutes, we will offer an additional 10 minutes in closing if Dr. Kennedy has any final thoughts she'd like to share. We would encourage some back and forth and follow-up. So if members, as we are going through these questions, would like to press further, ask for specificity, ask for clarification, please raise your hand and the person moderating that question will call on you in order. And with that, we're going to begin with our member Eric Guyette and question number 1 after Dr. Kennedy's introductory statement. Welcome, Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about the superintendency with Easthampton Public Schools. I hope to share with you tonight aspects of my education and experiences as a teacher, a school administrator, and a district leader. To highlight why I am deeply committed to earning your trust and joining the team of students, families, community members, and administrators who make up Easthampton Public Schools. Through my research that has encompassed many different forms, I have come to believe that Easthampton Public Schools is the type of school district that I hope to become an integral part of and seek to lead as your next superintendent. From the comprehensive plan that was the search team to those really dedicated folks who were part of my initial interview. They were a really well-informed group. All of the folks that I spoke to today and the 2 beautiful schools and the citizens of the town that I have spoke to today in our schools, and then when I've done some research leading up to this, it's easy to see that Easthampton is very committed to high quality education, and that's something that I truly value as an educator and as a person. I believe we are well matched through all that I have learned. I hope that you will see that I am what we call in education a reflective practitioner. I use issues, conflicts, problems to learn about different things going on in the schools that I currently work in, and bring about consensus and shape systems and processes to enhance our students' experiences and outcomes, as well as that for the people that work with us. I have a wide variety of experiences over my career, and I continually seek to know more, do more, and do it better. For example, I've worked hard over the past 3 years to increase my proficiency to a deeper degree and learn more advanced policies, details, and nuances of school finance and budgeting, because I felt that was an area a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that I needed a higher degree of expertise. I recently applied for certification through DESE as a school business manager, not because I want to be a school business administrator, but because I want to present as prepared as I can, that I am ready to lead this district as a responsive and responsible school superintendent. A few of the things that I am looking for in the superintendency is greater levels of interaction than I currently have in my job as assistant superintendent with the Athol-Royalston Regional School District. While I do a tremendous amount with families and community members, I want to do more. I attend a lot of events. I try to take advantage of as many of those opportunities as I can, but I want to do more. I felt like I had a deeper connection to families when I was a principal, and my current job just is different. And so I really would like to do more. I miss that connection. More of that connection. Secondly, Easthampton specifically appeals to me because of the strong and vibrant arts community. As a mother of 4 children, but they're 4 adults now, I know and understand the value of the arts and education. My son was able to access his love of music through school programs, and he learned to play multiple instruments, starting with the trombone in 4th grade. And my daughter was a competitive dancer who was the first student of distinction of fine arts in West Springfield High School many years ago. She just had her 36th birthday on Sunday. She might not be happy that I said that. And so my children were also student athletes, and so I personally and professionally see the importance of a school system that values and provides rich and varied extracurricular activities for a well-rounded education as part of human development of our students. That's the kind of school system that I want to be part of. I talked at length today with high school and middle Mountain View students about the arts in their schools, and clearly this is important to them as well. And so I really enjoyed those conversations. There were multiple conversations about that, so that was really wonderful. As I stated at the outset, I'm very invested in getting this job. I really want to be here. It is time for me to take the next steps professionally, and I'm convinced Easthampton Public Schools is the place for me. I've been watching Easthampton Public Schools for the last several months, waiting for this position to open up. I'm not interested in being a superintendent in just any place. I want to be superintendent of a place that fits me well, and where I can also be a really valuable and contributing member of the team. Maybe saying that I really want this job is not traditional interview protocol, but I want you to know how I feel and how I feel that this superintendency is meant for me and how much I want to be here. So again, I'd like to thank you for your time and your dedication to the students, staff, and families for being part of this process. And I'd really like to thank everyone, and especially the students who spoke to me today and told me about all the great things and some things that need to be improved here at Easthampton Public Schools. It has been a great day. I've really enjoyed it so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kennedy. First of all, we welcome your candor. Secondly, would you prefer we refer to you tonight as Dr. Kennedy, Cindy?
You can call me Cindy.
Cindy, excellent. Sure. All right, Cindy, I'm going to turn the floor over to Erica for question number 1.
Hi, Cindy. So thanks so much. You had mentioned that you could see that Easthampton was the right place for you. You also mentioned that Easthampton seemed to have the right approach in what we were doing in education. So my opening question, from what you've learned about our district and what would you describe as our greatest assets and strengths, and what would you see as our greatest challenges? If you want to kind of weave through from our littlest preschool towards the biggest picture of our district, and we can check in on those as we go along. But
okay.
Yeah, our greatest strengths and
so I've got my notes if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you a 2-minute warning. All right. So we're going to start time now. Go right
all
ahead.
right. So students are the greatest asset of any school district, and that's what every superintendent should think. They are the beacon. They are our why. They're the reasons that we do everything that we do, and that has to be the reason behind every decision, the reason for every initiative. And that has to be our guiding light toward moving forward. Our students must feel safe, valued, respected, and challenged in a positive school culture. A school's mission must pave the way for each student to realize their potential as learners, as leaders, as citizens, and as human beings. I see Easthampton as a strong and tight-knit community with active involvement of the residents in both schools and, it appears to me, town town politics and local initiatives. And the two beautiful schools that make up this school district are a testament to that, the dedication to education and to the community's young people. This district demonstrates commitment and pride and excellence just by having those two buildings. But beyond that, the strength of this community is leveraged through strong parent-teacher organizations, partnerships with local organizations. I read on your website about the Youth Arts Initiative. I am very familiar with the Easthampton City Arts events. I've attended them. And so I think that's great. I also had a wondering about expanding. I dabbled over onto the municipal website, the Municipal Leadership Academy in town, and I saw that they were looking for city citizens to join that, and I wondered, how could we bring that into the high school or the middle school? I really got very curious about that, got my curiosity flowing. So the investments into the physical campuses and school infrastructures, really do provide greater opportunity for family and community engagement and extracurricular programming. So that's something that I will probably talk about, I will talk about a few times during the questions tonight. Within these new buildings, we have to remain faithful to a growing emphasis on equity and inclusion to strengthen the district's ability to meet the needs of all of our students. This would include professional development for staff on equity practices and involve the community to the greatest extent possible to help to inform and educate all of us as we move along with inclusivity initiatives. And really, I think it's very important to have a wide variety of community involvement on our school improvement councils. And in one of my interviews with the student group today, they told me about that they missed their school council, which, speaking with Ms. Binienda, she told me that was a focus group that she used to do with the kids, and so they really missed that. So we ended up having a conversation about maybe bringing that back. They liked having their voice heard in that way. And I actually am just about to start doing focus groups again in the schools that I work in. Something I have done over the past several years so that I can hear students, what is worrying them, what is making them happy, all of those things. So the rich art scene and cultural vibrancy that's been part of the evolution of Easthampton over the past few decades really is to be admired. A thriving culture steeped in music and the arts, and so many of the students I spoke to today really did talk about that and how they enjoyed those parts of their learning environment. That really is very conducive to innovative learning. And bringing those community resources into our schools is really a must. Not only does this enhance the educational experience for our students, but it also serves as a platform for kids to learn about where they live and why it is unique and what it offers to them as citizens. And so I think since the pandemic, we've gotten away from volunteers in our schools and bringing people into our schools, and really I think the time is really ripe to be engaging and exploring those partnerships again. Challenges, like any district, can be tied to limited financial resources. All forecasts are predicting FY26 to be even tighter than the current fiscal year. And so there are many factors at play. It will be necessary, I understand, to advocate for community engagement and information to the community on what is important for the school, to both gather input and feedback from community members, but also to inform them on where we plan to go and where we see the needs are in our district, so that they understand why we're asking for the funding that we are asking for. So one of the things with the limited financial resources that I thought about and explored a little bit was cost sharing with neighboring towns. And maybe that's an option. Really need to start to be, or continue to be, very creative and innovative in how we pay for our programming. Things aren't getting any cheaper, are they? So another challenge lies in addressing equity gaps Meeting the needs of all students is really crucial, especially those from underrepresented or underserved populations. This can sometimes be difficult. I talked to some of the students here today about that, or actually more clearly they spoke to me about that. And so inclusive education is really at the forefront of making sure that we're meeting the needs of all students to close those achievement gaps. Talking a little bit about how we might do that, so looking into grant funding for early literacy programs at the elementary level, and maybe expanding some opportunities for intern and externships at the high school. Might be some ways to add additional programming. Using 21st century grants or other grants, similar funding options for after-school programming always offers more opportunities and more possibilities to keep our kids learning and connected to their schools. And then just talking about families a little bit, engaging families in equity-focused conversations and decision-making is, of course, very, very vital to engaging them in our schools. So some of the ways that I thought about maximizing the strengths by level. At the elementary level, I would look to expand possibly some community partnerships, or how can we maximize or leverage volunteers who want to be in our schools. Having families come in for family game nights, or one thing in my current district that's really taking off is having family cooking events where families come in and cook together, and very popular. And so that's something that we can do. We never get parents. I don't think any school district is feeling that they get parents into the schools enough. So just really trying to find different ways to do that. I would also support funding for new and existing programs. For example, I just used our Title IV money to start a new science fair program for our 4th graders at our elementary school. So I'm really interested in hearing what teachers and staff have to say, what they're looking for. What are some of those new ideas? Since I have to. So at the high school level, I'd really like to leverage my experiences that I bring from building our early college academy and innovative career pathways at Athol High School. I think that there's a lot of grant funding through DESE, and these programs, I was talking about this today, we have students in our junior and senior classes who are taking up to, maybe even a little bit more in some cases, 30 credits by the time they graduate from high school, and they are not paying, their families are not paying for any of this. So this is a huge financial opportunity for families, and it gets our kids college focused or thinking about their future even earlier. I like to build in leadership opportunities, big and small, in everything I do for students and staff. In October, I worked with DESE to send 2 of our high school students to speak on an equity panel that was attended by DESE leaders and school superintendents. And as a result, both of those students are now working with one of the researchers that was part of that panel. She's going to mentor them, which is just such a great opportunity. So overall, I would seek to use visibility, approachability, active listening, and authenticity to create and implement a comprehensive entry plan. I think listening for certainly the first several months is very important, because I need to listen to the voices of the different groups within Easthampton Public Schools to know how to prioritize and move forward and serve our students best.
That is time.
That's a nice one. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any follow-ups and move on.
Yeah, does anyone have any follow-up questions?
I have a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Can you speak a little bit about middle school and kind of the needs
I did.
of
I
middle
skipped
schoolers?
over that paragraph because it was 2 minutes.
So I bring you back.
Sure. So at the middle school level, I feel like this is really where our students can shine through the arts and partnering with local artisans and cultural organizations, maybe creating some opportunities for interdisciplinary project-based learning and things like that. And so I think that would be so fun and so meaningful at the same time for all involved. I'm also really interested in knowing more about how Easthampton Public Schools uses advisory time, particularly I think most high schools are pretty good with that, and middle school it can sort of be a dicey proposition sometimes with scheduling and other things, but using advisory time for both social emotional learning and career exploration. So using the DESE MyCap program, for example, is something that I'm looking to currently expand down into our 8th grade of our middle school. We've used MyCap and the Naviance Career Exploration Program at our high school with a fair amount of success, not fair amount, a lot of success. And so, but I will say that the middle schoolers told me that they were very concerned about my ability to effectively call a snow day. we kept circling back to the snow, and then they were talking to me about the student council, and so they want to have their voices heard.
Mm-hmm.
So really creating a structure for that is important.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was the only one that you had to breeze over, so that was comprehensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless anyone else has anything, I thought, yeah.
Great, we're gonna keep trucking on to stay on time. Question 2. Discuss how you approach and deal with conflict in the various arenas of school management, for example, administration, staff, students, and families. How do you define positive culture in the school community, and how do you build and support that? And please don't feel like you have to take up all 10 minutes. We're looking for a 10-minute discussion. So however much you want to share, we want to hear, but I don't want you to feel like...
I've got 39 pages of notes. Love
it.
I'm ready.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
All right, so as I think I touched upon in the first question, a strong school culture is one in which students, staff, and families feel safe, they feel engaged, they feel valued, they feel respected and supported. They know who to go to when they have a problem or they need some help. This emphasizes equity, inclusivity, collaboration, academic excellence, and social emotional health. All very, very important. A strong school culture promotes high expectations, mutual respect, and shared responsibility for student success. To build and support a strong school community, some of the necessary steps that I see are collaborating to work toward a culturally responsive, collaborating to work toward culturally responsive teaching practices, and maintaining a schedule of curriculum review cycles, for example, to ensure the tools that our teachers have help them to help our students and to teach our students in every content area and grade level. That's a lot, I understand that. As someone responsible for curriculum review cycles, it is a lot. That's a job in and of itself. But we need to make sure that the instructional materials that our teachers and students are using are representative of not only the students and the staff that we have in our schools, but also the global community that students will go out into after they graduate from Easthampton High School. So a little bit more about that in the next question. For students to be successful in school, we need clear expectations and norms. We need students to understand how to meet those expectations. We need students to understand and have clear consequences for what happens when those expectations are not met. I think we reach these norms and these expectations through consensus with staff, administrators, teachers, all of the people that work in our schools, parents, community members, and it's very, very important to have the students themselves, because if they don't understand it and they're not part of it, then they don't have any buy-in and it's not effective. And so that's really important. I think it's really critical that we have frequent and clear communication around what the expectations are in our school. And that will help to, I think, minimize conflict, because everybody knows what the game plan is. And those are big tasks, and I understand that, but that communication, when it's not there, really leads to a lot of problems. So having those expectations and expressed in student handbooks, for example, super important, and making sure that we're reviewing those each summer having them brought before the school committee so that everybody's on the same page. Really important. One of the things that I asked about when I was talking with the administrators at Mountain View School was about the strategic plan. And I had looked at it on the website, and I thought that there were some really good pieces in it. I saw that it does need to be updated. What they explained to me was that was before Mountain View had opened. So there is some work to be done with gathering stakeholder input, all of the stakeholder groups, to really devise and craft a fresh strategic plan based on where we're going from this point in time. But what I really liked was the statement, continually refine, we will continually refine the approach to engaging families, caregivers, and the community. That's a really admirable part of your mission, and the fact that it is stated that this is part of who we are and what we strive to do, that really grabbed my attention and spoke to me. So through this, all of looking at the website and looking at your student handbooks and looking at hearing from the staff and students today, there's a spirit of consensus, and there's really a desire for continued transparency in all that we do so that we're working together. As your superintendent, I do not really see the need to reinvent the wheel on every single objective. Some of them I think are really applicable still now, of course, in my understanding of Easthampton Public Schools, but really knowing what our goals are, what our dreams are, and what our hopes are for our students and our schools will shape that strategic plan. One thing that is important is how do we deal with conflict. When we have groups come together to talk about the strategic plan, we have to go into it knowing that not everybody's going to agree. Some people are going to want this and others are not going to want that. And so, but it's really important to understand that conflict is necessary for growth. It can be healthy and productive when managed well, respectfully and thoughtfully. So that's the context I would want us to embrace with that. So talking about the stakeholder groups, Laura, that you mentioned, for administration, I really want to be aware of their concerns. This district, so lucky in having a whole team of experienced administrators. You know, I asked them, how does the superintendent's office support you in the work that you do? And they were really very candid and said, you know, the superintendent's office has been really there for us when we need it with guidance, but also trust us to do our jobs. And so that's really wonderful. I am not a person who likes to stay in my office. I like to be in the schools. I like to see what students and teachers are doing. I like to know what's going on in the schools. I can do the paperwork in my office after the kids have gone home. And so that's really my style, is to be in the thick of things. And it sounds like your current superintendent does that as well. And so parents, for example, was one of the groups that you asked about where there's conflict. If a parent, for example, is upset that their child received a consequence for a discipline matter, for example, and that they don't think is fair, they don't agree with it, while I want parents to be able to approach me and talk to me about these things, it's really important that we follow the chain of command, because problems are really best solved at their point of origin. So as a principal, when it came to me, it's not passing the buck, but it really needs to be resolved at that point, because if they're going straight to the superintendent, that doesn't allow the principal to build and strengthen that relationship with that family through that problem resolution system. For students, I think that any student conflict issue is an opportunity. I'm always a teacher. It's always an educational moment. That's one thing that I never try to forget, is what it's like to be a teacher in front of students every day and be in that classroom for 6 hours a day. And so it's really important that our students are able to manage problem resolution, and be taught as it is developmentally appropriate. Sorry, I got off track there for a second. So a parent wanting to be heard about their disciplinary consequence for their child, it really needs to happen it needs to happen at the point of origin. So I would really, I think I spoke about this in the first question, I would really want to have listening sessions and open forums for staff, families, community members, administrators, to let me know where are the points of conflict? Where have historically there been issues, and are there policies that perhaps we need to look at, or processes that we need to look at? Because, things evolve, things change, and we need to be looking at those things and how can we make them better. So circling back to school culture, promoting the well-being and collaboration of staff, students, family, and community members, it's really important to always be focused on that through building our team, making it stronger, and then having shared leadership and as many voices as we can in decision making. That's what creates a supportive working and learning environment. So I really just want to talk a little bit about metrics for a minute. I know I'm almost out of time. So just talking about improving student and staff attendance would be some ways that I would measure this, particularly chronic attendance. In my current district, we exceeded our chronic attendance targets last year. So climate surveys, a reduction in disciplinary offenses, and of course an increase in academic achievement and engagement would all be ways that I'm looking to measure those things.
Anybody have a follow-up? Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple of follow-up questions. First of all, I'm a person who really likes real-world examples.
Okay.
I think it's really important that we know what it is. And as humans, handling conflict is probably the most difficult thing that we do. So could you give me a real-world example, something that happened when you feel like you handled conflict well, and when you feel like you had, or maybe not so well, and then well, and what you learned from those experiences? Because in this position, it is a lot. Because you're managing other staff, teachers, parents, students, they all are looking at you as ultimately being the person, I understand you say you wanted it handled down here. Wanting it handled down here and having it handled down here doesn't always happen. So if you could just give me a couple of those examples,
Sure. If I could clarify that, I just wanted to be really clear that I'm not looking to do the principal's job or micromanage the principal's job for them. So that's what I.
No, I understand what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, but it's still going to filter at times. That's going to happen.
100%. That happens now.
Yeah.
I still deal with. That's really the crux of my work with parents now. Is if something isn't handled at the school, then it comes to me.
Okay.
One thing. So I recently just. I'm gonna change a few of the details, but I dealt with an assistant principal recently who had an issue where a parent didn't want a particular substitute teacher in their child's classroom. There was some personal relationships between the adults, and the assistant principal actually investigated the concerns of the child's mother and really found nothing and said, I don't know what to do because there's really no basis for this complaint. So that was, I think, one of the things like you're getting at, that it's not as cut and dried. It's not easy to just say, oh, we'll do this. And so we talked about it, and I supported her in moving forward and saying to the parent, this is really an HR issue, a personnel matter, and while I want to listen and acknowledge your concerns, I can't tell you everything that I'm doing because there's that line of confidentiality and so forth. And so But one of the things I did was I said you could bring the parent in and you could do almost what we call a safety plan for students. Wouldn't necessarily be that, but similar, so that the student knows that they have a trusted adult to go to if they're feeling uncomfortable, because that was one part of this too, that reportedly the student also felt uncomfortable. And so while we could assure that this substitute wasn't going to be in that child's classroom, and we can make sure that happens, the parents still had some apprehension. So we want to allay those fears and make sure that we're doing everything we can, but yet we can't just not. It's hard enough to find substitute teachers, right? And so there was no reason not to have this person. And so that was a sticky situation that did end up coming to me, and I handed it back to her and with some guidance and said, if you have questions or you need me to sit in with the meeting with the parent, I'm happy to do that for you. Let's see, a time when I can think of another issue that had to do with a student who was making some really inappropriate comments and accusations at a staff member. And so that was such a difficult, and I have to be careful again because of confidentiality, that was such a difficult situation because I fully understood in today's context and things that happen in our world and how fast an accusation or a flippant comment goes onto Facebook and ruins someone's career. And this wasn't true. But on the other hand, the student had some disabilities that were contributing to this situation. And so in that kind of a case, I don't think there is a right answer. You just have to listen and take the information in. And my first inclination or my first priority is always to protect a student or the students as a whole. But I also have a responsibility currently as the assistant superintendent or the superintendent here to protect my staff. And so it's really, again, about really clear communication, just making the best decision you can with the information that you have and being very transparent about it and honest, and just like I am here saying, well, this is the rationale to the extent that I can share it with you. Mm-hmm. But it all comes down to those relationships that have been made ahead of time. You have to have trust between the parents and the staff, so that comes from that visibility, authenticity, interacting with them, so that when a difficult decision does come to fruition, hopefully you have that basis of trust already in place.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Linda, can you lead us in question 3, please? I might shave a minute or two off here and there, try to keep us on time. It's not your fault, it's ours.
No, only because I think you were covering some of this, actually in other questions. Because my question, you've somewhat handled in some of the other questions, because describe the methods by which you engage with students, families, and the larger community, and you've talked about that you find to be effective and meaningful. What do you aim to achieve through this engagement? How do you ensure equitable reach across the population and employ cultural competency and inclusion? And I know you've touched on some of that throughout, but if you could just, expand on that, please. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I thought about and talked about a little bit actually with the Antigone Lively today was talking about by what method do parents and families and community members want to receive information, and how do they want to give information. And so that's all part of building upon what I've said in the prior conversations, the prior answers. And so really understanding in what ways do we want to share information? Because schools traditionally have been really good with newsletters and things like that, with sending information home, but how do we make sure that we're getting it back? How are we establishing those two-way communication avenues? And so, and there's not just one way to do that. And so, but it can't be me deciding that. It has to be the families telling me, okay, a survey is good for sharing our thoughts, because maybe someone doesn't want to stand up in a public meeting and speak. They're shy, or for whatever reason. So that might be one way that would work for some people, but other people might like to have, open communication, open forums kinds of meetings. And so, how does that work best for the families? So I think in today's world, a superintendent is not just about core content areas. They must be open to serving the whole community, more than just an instructional leader. So as I mentioned previously, doing listening sessions, not just in that first year to develop and implement the entry plan, but continually. I think that's something that we in my current district do pretty well. We give opportunities, we set up opportunities to hear what parents, what students, what staff want us to know. What are they worried about? What's working well? I also like good news. And so, I think I mentioned already holding focus groups with students. That's really great. Having questions, do you feel safe in school? What makes you happy at school? What do you want to, what is missing that you would like to see added? And so those are all some ways that I would seek to learn more about Easthampton Public Schools and all of the stakeholders, and continue in working together. I think by doing that, it builds those trusting relationships that I was just speaking about a few moments ago. So I think also being very active and supporting parent groups like CPAC and other things like that, and really being supportive of them. What are their needs? How do they want to have events in the schools? And how are ways that the superintendent's office can work with them to further their vision and mission? I think including students, parents, community members on hiring teams. I loved, I just actually saw Walter walking out. He was on my initial interview team, and he had some great questions. Even at the end, I meant at the end, not the question he was assigned, but at the end. So, and he had some good answers to my questions too. So that's really valuable to me, is to include students on hiring teams when we can do so. Also inviting all of those constituents to curriculum review and other committees, having student leadership representation on the school committee. That's important too. I think that's an opportunity, because I always want to be building in opportunities for students to take advantage of a variety of leadership skills. So using research and guidance from DESE to implement strategies across family and community engagement, particularly to continue to build and educate about diversity and equity and inclusivity, creating systems and structures through community and regional coalitions. I did hear about all the good work the Family and Community Center is doing here, and that's so important, making sure that always expanding what resources are available through our schools, either for mental health supports. In my current district, we also even help with home heating issues, and we have a very active food pantry, which has really helped to bring a lot of our food pantry is in our high school, and that has changed how a lot of our families feel about coming into school. So that's really been an unintended plus. So to ensure we're including historically marginalized voices, some necessary steps are collaborating towards that culturally responsive teaching that I talked about before, PD work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I heard about the inquiry cycles that make up the PD plan here in the district, and I think that's great. I'd love to bring in more resources on racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So as your superintendent, I will ask the community to be open to having courageous conversations about these topics in service to our students. I would say you don't have to agree to everything, and you don't even have to agree to anything. Just come to the table, because that's the first step. And we begin with conversations, and we engage in talks that are respectful, brave, and have positive intent as their backbone. Because without that, many of students in Easthampton schools and any of our schools across our country, they'll continue to feel invisible, less than, and will have the lack of privilege. And I can't imagine that any parent or educator would want that for their child. And so I really feel that by engaging in this work continually, we're not only educating ourselves, but we're also doing better and being better for the benefit of every single one of our students.
Thank you.
That is perfect time for that.
Wow.
Nailed it.
You're very encouraging, Laura.
All set, Linda?
I'm all set.
You're gonna move.
Oh,
That's
a new one.
wow.
Susan knew how to do it too.
That's interesting.
We also move
Something
our arms
or-
around.
Is that what it is? Oh, I thought we lost power.
No, I said to go home.
We do often lose power in East Hampton.
Sweet Peter.
That
Okay.
We're very still.
Remember how worried I was about tech? Okay. Question 4,
Well, now I
Sam.
have a story. And the lights went out.
Very dramatically.
Dramatic.
So, my question is about special education. How would you define the purpose of special education and describe some examples of how you ensure that students with disabilities and their families can access the full life of the school in both academic and non-academic contexts?
Okay. So I define the purpose of special education to remove barriers that are present for some students and not others, thereby providing a more equitable access for all parts of a free and appropriate education in a least restrictive environment. All learners deserve to receive a high-quality education, getting what they need to succeed and grow and thrive. The barriers I speak of may limit a student's potential or ability to bring their gifts to the school community, and we really need to be aware of that. Every child can learn, and every student must be afforded that chance to be educated so that they're able to realize the potential and lead the life that they want to, and go out into society once they finish high school and be contributing members of society and responsible citizens. So ensuring that students and their families can access all parts of school life. I think many districts find themselves in a quandary over the percentages of students who are on IEPs, and so we could probably talk for hours and hours about special education. I think that one part of that is that some teachers particularly who come to teaching through an alternative pathway don't necessarily always have the tools to design and implement those interventions for students, and they so want their kiddos to get the help that they need. And so as a society, we've gone to over-referral to special education. So I'm not sure if that's what's happening here, but I suspect, because it's I haven't found a colleague yet who says it's any different in their district. So that's really important on the one hand, to make sure that our special education systems are really working the way they're supposed to, and that we're making sure that we're getting students the interventions and supports they need in that pre-referral process, and making sure that the students, because if a student is on an IEP who really could thrive and succeed with other interventions, then that creates a drain on the special ed system. So with our students who do have identified disabilities, how are we making sure that we are not constructing barriers that hinder access? So making sure, one of the things that I like to think about and talk about with my leadership team is we would not separate students out of a classroom because they had a broken leg, or because of the color of their skin, or because of some other arbitrary reason. So why is it okay that we separate students out because of a disability? Some students do need to be in a separate, because that's the way they learn best. That's one thing. But it's really important that we're keeping our students in the least restrictive environment so that they can learn alongside their age-appropriate peers. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, and it's something I talk with my team about every single day. So how do we make sure that kids have equitable access? One of the ways that I think about is having set-aside spaces where students with sensory concerns, for example, can go to have a break. I talked today, I think it was at Mountain View, yes, about some work that we've done. We've had Dr. Alex Hirschberg in our schools for 3 years, well, this is the 3rd year, and through his work with our trauma-informed practice teams in each of our schools, we've created break spaces in every single classroom where a student can go, and then they're not out of the learning environment, but they can go to a separate space to have a break, maybe use some sensory equipment or something like that. That's just one example. When we're talking about something like a school dance or a school event, can we have a parallel space? So can we have, if we're having a school dance, can we have another room where students who are feeling overstimulated or having some other difficulty being in the larger group, where they can still be among their peers in a parallel space? So they still have the opportunity to have the experience, but we are being mindful of their needs as well. So for families with communication needs, for example, making sure that those things are set up ahead of time. So it really, again, requires constant communication and really being aware of the needs of every single student and family in the school district. We, in my current district, are struggling right now because we've had such an influx of students with who have EL status, and their families need translation services, and we cannot keep up. And so this is a conversation that we have every single week. How are we going to do better next week? And that is truly the way that we approach it, because it's changing that rapidly where I currently work. So also, I think it's really important to think about the parts of this question when we are planning the budget each year, because we need to know. Special ed is usually a big chunk of our budget, and so we need to know where are we spending our money because we need to, where are we spending our money because it's in the best interest of students, and how are those needs changing. I really would like to, how am I on time, Laura?
30 seconds.
Okay. I'd really like to talk about one thing that we did in my current district. We hired a 6th grade teacher this year who uses a wheelchair. She's amazing. And she's such a wonderful teacher. And I think that our students in that school see every day that she's a consummate professional. She's really kind and funny, and she's just a great teacher. Her classroom is on the 2nd floor, so she uses the elevator. And I think she's a tremendous asset to our teaching team, and not because she uses a wheelchair. But I have to say, I really like that our kids see that she has a wheelchair, she moves around differently, and she's still great. And that is just, I'm so thankful for her, mostly because she's just a really great teacher. But I just really love that. I'm sorry that she's, you know, I wish that she was not in a wheelchair, but she just is so, just approaches it and doesn't let it stop her. And I really love that example that she sets for students. So I think I'm out of time. Okay.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions to follow up?
We're going to cruise right along.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Megan Harvey with question 5.
Did you all introduce yourselves earlier? What's that?
We introduced your chair.
Well, I don't want to go wildly out of step, but I'm Megan Harvey. I'm so sorry for coming in late. I had an unavoidable childhood. So I'm on the school committee, but I also have 3 children in the district. And occasionally they have needs as well.
I
And
get
I say
it.
occasionally with my eyebrows raised because. Okay. So my
Thank you for that.
I'm going to ask you the next question. Regarding assessment of students and evaluations of staff, what are your preferred tools and methods to gather data for these various groups and across grade levels? And if you would, please discuss how you use that data to inform choices around curriculum, programming, staffing, and specifically anything from that you'd apply to our district.
Okay. So currently, we use benchmark assessments, pretty standard for most school districts. DIBELS, we use NWEA map testing. That one sometimes school districts use different ones for that, to understand growth and achievement at certain points of the school year. Assessments such as these are evidence-based practices, and they provide usable data to not only let us know where individual students are in their growth and achievement, but also cohorts of students. This is in addition to obviously MCAS, and we also use, last year, we adopted Amplified MClass to do the dyslexia screener, and I really like that a lot. That has really helped our DIBELS implementation as well at our early childhood grades. So I do support the use of common assessments, but I think that that's really important that teacher teams develop those and that it not be top down. Teacher teams need to develop those because that way they know where they might need to reteach or what kind of data they're looking to collect. Last year as a district, we purchased Open Architects. I'm not sure if any of you know about this. It's a grouping of numerous data dashboards, and that has transformed the way we use data, and it's really easy, and it's easy for data to be uploaded, so that's really great. I personally advocate for regularly, maybe quarterly reviews of data as grade level teams. I think that that's really important. I heard today about how teacher teams in their inquiry cycles of their PLCs, they look at student data and they use that for various things that they are researching and learning about. I'm a big proponent of response to intervention data. So when a student, we just talked about special ed a few questions ago, so when a student is having difficulties, not making adequate progress, or having behavioral challenges, for example, what is the data that shows what is working and what is not working? I see in Easthampton Public Schools that there's some growth relative to English language arts achievement. In last year's MCAS, I did hear today about that there's already a curriculum review underway. I think that's fantastic. I just did that in my current district in 2023. We did the curriculum review for K-5 and 6-8, and then last year we did it for 9 through 12 and adopted high quality instructional materials for all 3 of those, and we are currently piloting a new mathematics curriculum at the elementary level. And our science has been changing, mostly at the secondary level. So regarding staffing and data, one example that I could talk about is Title I funding to provide intervention services. So we have been lucky that our Title I funding has increased quite a bit over the last 5 years, and we've used that to add interventionists to our elementary schools. And we also pay for our academic coaches mostly through Title I funding as well. We have a higher degree of teacher turnover in Athol-Royalston than you do. I think that your district is hovering somewhere around 86%, and in Athol-Royalston we're at about 80%. So we are hiring a fair amount of teachers every year, and so it's really important that we have those academic coaches. Our veteran teachers take advantage of I can't say enough about our academic coaches. They're amazing. They're just amazing. And then another thing that we use data at our elementary level for was last year I worked with Dr. Mary Brown, who is someone at DESE, and we got some free literacy tutoring through her office for our entire school, including summer school. I thought that was a big win. So how would I use that here? I have talked about adopting high-quality instructional materials, particularly in English language arts, and I'd be really curious to see how that would increase achievement among Easthampton students. I've talked a lot about gathering input, so really looking, particularly in that first year, about qualitative data to gather and analyze with the leadership team the voices of the teachers as important ingredients in all of this. When I like to use data when I'm building the budget, for example. So how is enrollment shifting? How many teachers do we need? Do we need to move teachers from here to there? And that's really important that I work with on the city side to know how the population is changing and where might there be a subdivision going in where there will be families coming in and how will that affect the schools. So all of that data is really important. Talking about evaluation of teachers, I really don't see achievement data or assessment data being tied to evaluation of teachers. However, I would expect principals to use that to implement coaching or particular PD pathways for teachers. So everything is data to me. Numbers and a benchmark assessment to trends and what families are talking about. And a superintendent has to be always open to data and look at everything as information and data, and to be thoughtful and proactive to keep things moving forward.
All right.
We seem to be very aligned when I stop talking to your phone.
I think thank you. I think that's great. Anyone have any follow-up questions around? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben, care to proceed to question 6?
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Very happy to be here.
Next question revolves around technology. We have here, discuss your views on the successful integration of technology into teaching and learning across grade levels. How do you balance the clear need for digital literacy while still maintaining a focus on improving critical thinking and encouragement of creative self-expression? What are the greatest benefits of and areas of concern around technology as it impacts education?
Ben, this is the question that I had to ponder the longest.
Let's go. Let's dig
It's the
in.
one that took us the longest to write as well.
All right, good. I think that many of our students have a better grasp on the changing face of technology than we adults do. And for many adults, they recognize that. And for many adults, it's scary or intimidating or whatever word you want to use. But we adults really need to do better, and I'll get back to that in a moment. So in the classroom, preparing our students to use communication tools use technology as an effective communication tool. So particularly as a means to literacy, and we use our devices to read, write, speak, and listen. Those are the 4 parts of literacy, and so we really need to be looking at technology to enhance that learning, because it's not going away and it's just going to increase in our society. And it's really scary as an educator to think about that. It's been around for a long time, but that we're preparing students for jobs that haven't been even, never mind invented yet, but even conceived of yet. And so that's really daunting as an educator. Well, how in the world do I do that? But we have to be able to teach students to use the tools that are in front of them. But I think the most important part is the part of the question, the critical thinking skills. I want every student to graduate high school being a critical thinker. It's not to know that, neon is a noble gas. It's that you need to know that how to be a critical thinker, to take care of yourself and make responsible decisions as an adult. So within that context, technology is a powerful means to enhance learning outcomes, but I also see that it can be really detrimental. I'm not sure if any of you have read the 2023 Surgeon General's report on social media and devices with particularly adolescents. That's a scary piece of research, but it's something that I really think every parent and every educator should read, and I won't go into it too much, but it really does talk about that that's what I mean when I said we as adults and parents and caregivers need to do a better job, because it's affecting how our children's brains are developing, and it's affecting their mental health, and it's affecting their growth. So, but using technology as a learning tool has boundless possibilities within a responsible format. And we need to know and understand what our teachers need to know so that they can support that continued learning. And we need to partner with families so that we're having a united approach in this. So as a writer myself, I've written several books and I've published them. So digital literacy has opened so many doors for me as a person. And there are many ways that students can create projects and demonstrate learning. So I'm going to get to a juicy detail now, Linda. So I just purchased for my current district Study Island, which has been around for a while, but it just got bought out by another company. So Study Island is a web-based software platform that has a couple of purposes that I was really interested in. One of them was that it has the Massachusetts learning standards embedded in it. So teachers can go in and create assessments much easier. I'm trying to make my teachers' lives easier. So they can go in and say, I want some test questions on this particular standard, and boom, it gives them an assessment based on a unit of instruction. So that's one thing. But the other piece of it is that it also offers teachers a way to connect those standards to assignments and some extra help through that intervention on that Study Island platform. So if a student is absent, for example, and has missed some core instruction and wants to be working on it at home, or a student just needs extra help, or they need it in a different format, this is the ways that technology can help out with that. Because I'm on time, I'm going to skip over, but really the digital platform of our ELA curriculum adoption was really important because it provided a lot of differentiated resources for teachers. And so in the curriculum review that you're doing, I'm sure that your teachers in your committee are looking at that too. It's our responsibility to teach our students how to be critical thinkers about their own safety, their health, their well-being, and what information they are taking in and believing. In addition to literacy, technology, I see it as an avenue to health education as well. And so we have to do better than we currently are as a nation. And I really take this personally as a district level leader. It's a big discussion, and again, it's one that I would really like to hear. I know parents are so concerned about this, and they don't really know what to do with it, know what to do about it. And so how do we work together and move forward and look at the research and have conversations and really support our kids and make sure that they're healthy and safe?
Thank you. And questions? Could I ask?
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Study Island sounds like AI a little bit, like it has some AI features to it, which can be very beneficial in some ways for sure. I'm just curious if you know anything about the connections there.
I don't think it's, it might be, but it's not really generated by AI. It's not like, ChatGPT where you put in a prompt and it spits out your assignment for you. It really does require the teachers to go in and select those standards if they're building an assessment. But it also, so for example, if a student is working on, let's say, author's purpose, there might be a some work, some exercises for the students to work on, and then intuitively, if the student is doing well with that piece of it, it will increase in difficulty, or if they're not getting the answers right, it will backtrack. So it really is very individualized and intuitive, which a lot of programs like this are.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a piece of AI in there.
Oh,
Whenever
I'm sure there is.
AI happens to be one of my concerns. It's something that I ran on. I'm very technical aware. I'm like, I hate ageism because people always make this assumption that I don't. I use AI every day, and I have real concerns about AI in both the thing. I think there's an ethical piece of AI that we need to be teaching our students, because whenever we talk about critical thinkers, we have to realize that critical thinking now and going forward is about whether there is an AI piece into everything. With that being said, I think that when you said this is an important conversation, I think it could be perhaps one of the most important conversations that we have as educators going forward. I think when you said that we are preparing students for jobs that we cannot conceive of yet is a very important piece. Your awareness of that is noted. And so just with that being said, how do you best feel right now that we can prepare? Right now, you're walking in, you're superintendent of schools, AI is going to be different next year. It's going to be different tomorrow. We are using models that are being used. There will be a time when the authenticity that exists in AI now does not, we're looking at other AI. So I know that's a big question, but I just wondered, really speak to the AI component for me, please.
Sure, I use AI a lot as well. So I try to use it to ask questions and learn about perhaps perspectives. For example, recently, as we were preparing our budget in my current district, I just asked ChatGPT, what are some grants that I might be missing? I put in my district but here's why I bring this up. It told me to look at ESSER funding, and it told me to look at the SEL mental health grants, neither which are options right now. So that's where critical thinking, because what if I did that for this interview when I came to you and said, oh, we don't have any budget things to worry about. We can get ESSER funding from the federal government. Well, you would say, all right, we're done with you, right? So. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. So, but that critical thinking part is important, because you still have to be an arbiter of the information that's being spit out. But back to how do we address this and how do we move with it? I think that we are going to, as school districts, we're going to need to start implementing or including policies about this in our student handbooks and in our school committee policies, district policies. I think that those policies are going to come about, again, through communication and open dialogue. What are the concerns? I think being more conservative is a better idea. We're talking about our children here, so limiting access to that until we have a handle and understanding on it is a good idea. I'm always for being more conservative to protect kids, and then maybe we can move in the direction that we figure out that we want to go in. But really, I think as educators, we're going to need to be proactive in providing our families and our staff as much information as we can, and in the form of professional development, in the form of talking about it, in the form of what are we going to do about it. Here's what other school districts are doing to approach this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our final question. Buckle up. Good one. So everything we've discussed so far, now we talk about how we pay for it. The final question, describe your experience in developing and managing a comprehensive school district budget, including considerations for both recurring and capital expenses, in a district such as ours, which has maintained level services in recent years, but has a keen appetite for the expansion of programming. Discuss how you might access funding for that and what that potential timeline might look like.
I have a lot to say, so maybe I just talk really fast.
Perfect.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, this is an area in which I've spent considerable time over the past several years to increase my ability as a knowledgeable and responsible fiscal manager. I've built school budgets in different roles for many years. I did so large schools, small schools, principal, a district level leader in districts that were financially strapped, and in my current district where we seem to be pretty flush with money most of the time. And so because we have rural money and regional money, things like that, and E&D savings. But I recognize that a budget like Easthampton is different from that, being a municipal budget rather than a regional budget. So to build a budget in Easthampton, I would take a multi-pronged approach. Big surprise, the first thing I would do is to be asking questions and listening. So sitting down with principals, department directors, and the business office to ask what about the current budget process works well and what might need to be changed. It really has to work for the people involved. So I would study the last several years' budgets to look for trends and priorities. As I already spoke about, using the district strategic plan as the map for expenditures is really important. Strategic planning is an area in which I feel particularly strong, and I really do think that it needs to be representative of all stakeholder groups, and in that way we can get voices and perspectives into our budget. So holding open meetings with staff as we draft a budget, and then as we finalize a budget. I want to know about needs, wants, priorities of each set of constituents. As a member of the municipal team here in Easthampton, it's important that I know and understand what the town's priorities are, as well as mandates for the larger budget and how that will affect the school budget. This is an ongoing responsibility that I understand will require devoted attention to a very complex process. So typically a school department, I'm sure it's no different in Easthampton, has the biggest chunk of any town budget. And so it's important that I understand how all of those pieces work together so I can advocate for the school budget and our needs. It's really important to be savvy about Chapter 70 funding, special education spending, transportation regulations, and all of those really expensive things. As I mentioned, I was a couple of months ago at a Connecticut Valley Roundtable meeting where there was an MASS and an MASC representative, and they were talking about how Chapter 70 funding for FY26 is looking leaner and really going to need to be thinking about prioritizing. So regarding expanding programming, as you mentioned in the question, it will be vital to understand the objectives of expanding any programming. What are we looking to do, and what are the options for available funding? I really want to cross-reference grants, for example, with general fund availability. I don't really like to put salaries in grants unless we think it's going to be, like, for example, we're currently looking to hire an interim dean. That's a short-term solution, so that kind of grant-funded salary would be okay to me, but when you hire a lot of people, as many districts learn through ESSER, when you hire a lot of people on grant funding, then you've got to break a lot of hearts eventually, so that's not something. So one way that I expanded programming in my current district is through the Early College Academy and the Innovation Pathways. Those have been about $750,000 in grant-funded programming, and we are in our second year of both programs. Our Early College Academy has exceeded projections with about 60, I think we're 60 or 63 students in that program in junior and senior year of high school, and we partner with Mount Wachusett and Fitchburg State, and for our Innovation Pathways we partner with Mass Hire and a local manufacturing company called LS Starrett Corporation. So using grants in that way is one way to really expand the budget. I did look at the grants that Easthampton has traditionally been awarded. And I did see some opportunity for some other, and a lot of smaller grants really can add up. I did talk with the Mountain View School team today about how we use grant funding to bring what we call culture monitors into our schools. And so these are folks who are trained in Tier 1 and Tier 2 behavioral intervention. So they go to classrooms when a student is having a hard time in a class, and they are kind of the boots on the ground. So when an assistant principal isn't available, or the culture monitor has a relationship with a particular student, that's a way that we've used grant funding to meet some of the behavioral challenges with some of our students. I did take a look at, I know that you have just finished a contract, and so I did take a look at, I think Lori, I think you talked a little bit about salaries with me the other day, and so I did. It looks like Easthampton is on par with starting teacher salaries, and that middle piece it can be challenging when you don't have a lot of different avenues for funding. So looking at grants is one way to free up some expenses, moving some expenses to grants. Really using that fine-tooth comb. Anytime I build a budget, even when I review a budget, my budget on a monthly, sometimes weekly basis, I'm using that proverbial fine-tooth comb, looking at every line to make sure that we are eliminating excess spending and things like that. And so one thing I'd like to, I'm already past
30 seconds.
Okay. One thing that's really important is careful record keeping and data. So back to the data, and this is really important. So I really learned an important lesson last year. I wrote the Student Opportunity Act for our district in the midst of a controversial decision. Our SOA category, we were category 11, and we got dropped down to category 10, meaning that we were slated to receive $771,000 less than we expected. Yeah. And so the part that I learned was, I have to give credit to my current superintendent, Matt Aaronworth. He talked to anybody who would listen. He talked to everybody at DESE, including the acting commissioner. He got on the phone every week to our legislators, our local legislators. He worked with our DESE SSOS team, and we found out that it was because some of our students were not coded properly. Mm-hmm. And so we really got our leadership team involved, and we looked at all of the students that were involved that needed to be coded, and we corrected those errors. And not only did we not lose that $771,000, but we ended up getting $802,000. Nice. So that right there, I learned so much from that, and I wouldn't have learned about that had I not lived that experience. And Matt was really, honestly, I didn't want to hear about it anymore. But
I heard quite a bit about it. Yes, I heard quite a bit about it.
You did. Oh, he told you yes. He is very proud, and you know what? He should be. He was tireless with that. And so, but through that, I learned that you can't just accept it. You know, when something like that happens, you've got to explore every avenue to try to get it back or to try to make up the difference. And so that was a really important lesson that I learned through that experience. So, yeah.
Anyone have a follow-up on the finance piece? We have a I
have a small one.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben. Sure.
I was really interested in the idea of the culture monitor.
Yeah, me too.
That you've done a nice job talking about the importance of reaching out to different stakeholders and bringing people into the schools and such. Culture monitor sounds like that. Who is a culture monitor?
Yeah, what is a culture monitor?
Where do you hire a culture monitor?
So they are members of our paraprofessional unit. And there are people so the job description was, someone who likes kids and someone who has maybe some behavioral training or, some applied behavior analysis training. Our culture monitors come to us with different sets of experiences and education. But really, they are the boots on the ground. They're in the hallways when they have walkie-talkies. So when a student is, struggling is disrupting a class, for example, they go to that classroom and either go into the classroom, which is my preferred, because I never want a student to come out of learning, if we can help it. Go in and have a little chat, or maybe if the student has a behavior plan or needs a break, takes them out to maybe the sensory room, goes for a walk. If the student has a behavior plan, maybe that's their time for their preferred reward, based on working towards their behavior plan. So we have them in all of our schools, and I have to say in the high school, it actually is the most successful. So it's just great having those eyes and ears in the hallways.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're sitting at 6:28 currently, so we have nowhere else to be. But you will be asked to participate in the meet and greet at 7. So we want to be sensitive of your time. If you would like to share any final thoughts, we're happy to listen. And you tell me how much time I should put on here so that you will get a little brain break between this interview and the meet and greet at 7.
Oh, I don't know. You pick.
Okay, well, good. You want to go 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure. I actually thought about reading this and reading the structure of this interview, and I really thought about what is it that I want to leave you with. And I think that through all of my research and all of my answers, I hope that I have presented you with a pretty clear picture of who I am. But just in case, I'd like to just share a little short 2-part story. I don't think it'll take 5 minutes. In 2022, our superintendent of Athol Royalston, the school committee decided not to renew her contract. And it doesn't matter if I agree or don't agree with their reasons. They had their reasons, and that was their job to do that. But this was a tremendous blow to our leadership team. This was a person that every one of us on the leadership team felt we learned from every single day. We so admired and respected, and we still do, this person. And so I'm still very much in touch with that superintendent, who is now an associate commissioner at DESE. But she really transformed the way that I present myself as a leader, because I want to be that inspiration and that support to the people that I work with. And so that's really important. And the second part of the story is that at the time she was leaving, we were devastated, and my team really encouraged me to submit an application for the superintendent. And I wasn't sure if that was the right move for me at the time, but my team needed me. And so I did that. And I was a finalist along with Matt, our current superintendent, and 2 other folks. And the school committee wanted someone, 2 things. They wanted someone who was diametrically opposed to that superintendent who was leaving, and they wanted someone with significant financial experience. And Matt did have that, and well, still does, had more years of financial experience than I had. And so that was not an easy thing for my district, for them to hear, for me to hear, is what I want to say. But I did ask why, and they told me about that financial piece of it. And so that's why I've worked so hard. And I could have quit. I had other options. I could have packed up my office, and some people did. But I decided not to, because my team needed me. And they really said, please don't leave. We really need you for this transition, and other people are leaving, and we really want you to stay. And so I stayed. And honestly, Matt made it pretty easy to stay. We've really formed a really solid team, and while sometimes we don't agree on things, we've developed a relationship where we're able to say that. And so that's really the kind of relationship that I want to develop as a superintendent, where my team can say, if I'm on the wrong track, or I'm thinking about something the wrong way, or I need to look at another perspective. So that's something that I really have learned over these 2.5 years. But the reason why I didn't leave is because my team needed me. I'm going to try not to be emotional.
Good luck in this group.
So I'm not going to look at you, Laura. And so I really want you to know who I am as a person. I'm hardworking. I'm really dedicated to education. I can be direct. I can be a tough cookie, but I'm also very compassionate. I can't look at you, Laura. and I'm very caring. I care very much about the students in my charge. And I love the people in my life very deeply. So if those are the qualities that you're looking for in your next superintendent, I'd love to join this team. I really feel like this is the place that I want to be. It has been a hard decision for me to decide to want to leave my team, but professionally, I need to grow. I'm a person who always has to be growing and learning, and this is the next step for me. So with that, I made it. Thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your really well thought out questions. And I really look forward to your decision next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think I've ever gotten applause in an interview before. Lights out and applause.
Exactly.
I like to switch things up.
Yeah.
All right, you got it. You got that covered.
You should be exceptionally proud. I think that was an incredibly professional, thoughtful, competent performance.
Well, thank you so
and I found
much.
all my interactions to you to be on the same measure. We're very flattered that you applied. And I don't look forward to the decisions and the discussions moving forward. Thank you again. And motion to adjourn for the evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Eric. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And we are adjourning at 6:34 p.m.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.